Hello everyone, welcome to this video on variables in Python. In this video, we will be learning about what are variables and how to define and use the variables. First of all, we need to know that variables are the containers in Python to store the values. What does it mean by containers in Python? So we define variables to store the values in any format, right? So that's what we do. And in Python, you don't need to specifically call the name, call out the data type to be variable to specify the variables. Python will just consider it to be the variable as far as it satisfies the requirement. And what are the requirements to have it as a variable? First of all, let's take one example, very easy example from our existing codes. I'm saying greeting equals hello world. Okay. Channel name equals data speaks. And platform equals YouTube, etc. I'm just running that line of code and you can see that code executes successfully. Let's understand variable here. Here, we are defining a variable name called greeting. We're giving a name called greeting separated by equal sign that is being assigned. The value here is hello world. Every single text requires single or double quote having the same quotes starting and ending with. Here we have defined three variables. Variable name 1 is greeting, variable name 2 or variable 2 is channel name, and variable 3 or variable name 3 is platform. The values, we in the beginning said that variables are defined to store values in Python. We defined a variable called greetings to store the value hello world. We defined the channel name variable to store the value data speaks. We defined the variable called platform to store the value YouTube. And each variable names and values are separated by equal sign. I will take you through a couple of variable the requirements of the variable or requirements to have a valid variable assignments. Let's look at those one by one. First of all, must variable names must start with a alphabet character that is from A to Z, lower or uppercase, A to Z, alphabet character, A to Z, or underscore. Okay, so variable name must start with those. I will show you what exactly that means. Let's look at the first condition. Here, if you add 1 and you try to run that, invalid decimal literal. That being said, it says, hey, it's an invalid name of the variable. You can always add underscore there and this will be still valid variable. Okay, but you cannot have a number or a symbol. If you add hash, it's going to be converted to the comment. If you add dash, it is throwing error because it's not valid. If you add and sign, it will still throw an error here. That being said, you cannot have a number or symbol in the beginning of the variable. That's what it means, right? And the next component of the variable, but you can always add a number or maybe symbol towards, you can only add number or you cannot have a symbol at any point of the variable, in any position of the variable name while assigning the variable. You can always have numbers, but those numbers cannot be in the beginning. They can be at the later part of the variable. So that is one of the most important factor that you need to take into account while creating variables. Now, variables can store multiple values. For example, you can say, "How are you doing?" Right? If you run that, it will successfully run and it will store the values. I will give you a couple of examples. Once you store the values, then what is the use case? Where do you want to use those values, right? So you created a container that is called variable to store these values, and you can created another container called channel name to store this value, and you can keep storing those like 2025. You can say 8, right? You can say whatever those are, so you can still see that it cannot begin with 0, it has to be with the whole number, etc. You can still call those variables and store those values. And here you might have noticed that you can store one or more statements or values within a single variable, and those will be used later part dynamically while calling many print statement or defining a function, etc. We'll be covering that soon, but I want to show you a couple of ways, a couple of reasons to define the variables. You can assign the variables of any type. For example, you want to store someone's name. Let's say name equals, let's say Jack. And you want to store Jack's age in a variable. So you assign name of the variable age and you will store 35. So you can say here age of Jack is J capital, Jack is 35. This is numerical integer, or we can say integer type of variable. And you can also store monthly income, for example, and you can store 10,547.45, and this is floating point number type of variable. And you can put city here, and you can put New York, and you can put, this is the text, again text type of variable you can store. And also let's do this, family members, right? So I have, now here I want to introduce a list variable. So I want to say dad, and I want to say mom, I want to say younger brother, I want to say younger sister, let's say uncle here. So above we had a single value variables. Here we have a multiple value variables. That being said, you can store multiple values in different data type, right? So here this is the list, this is the list of family members of Jack. So we have talked about the list in the next video. However, I just want to introduce here that you can create a variable with many values in it. You can also create a variable that contains different data type. We have already seen here, you can create a list of the, let's say, miscellaneous. And in the miscellaneous, I want to store favorite movie, and I want to store, or I want to just say hobby type of right movie, and I want to say travel. I want to say 1986, for example, a number, and then just I'm adding probably the birth year of the person, and maybe I want to store a 45 point, not 45, let's say 156.87. Let's say that's a person's weight, etc. You can see here that you can store text and number, whole number, and decimal type of data in a single list with the valid variable name. Now, these are the ways that you can store. There are many ways you can store the values within the variables, and I have just introduced a list here. So we have whole video on list data structure, so we'll be covering that in detail. We have covered that in the very detail in the next video. However, one thing I want to show you here is that you can store many variables, as many as you want, and many values within a single variable name. And now you can use that for your customized need, as we have seen that you can store many values all together. So you can always print multiple values. So you can say using formatted string. So formatted, you can join, you can have a variable print in the same print statement. For example, name of the person is, and you can say space here, and you can say name, and you can add a full stop here, and you can also say the person's name. So add again here, name is, so space is, you can say age and years old, right? Something like that. And if you print that, and you can say separator equals none, and you can print the value here 35 after the age, that it should be a space, and you can always customize that. And look at this, the name of the person is Jack, and after Jack here, after the full stop, let's add a space to make it more well formatted. This is how you can use the variables in order to get the values that you want to get into your print statement. And we have covered many different type of variables in the other videos, which provides you information about the list, very well detail about the list and tuples and dictionaries, etc. Do not forget to check those video in the channel. It is going to really help you to advance your knowledge in Python for data science. You can define multiple variables in the same line. For example, I want to say greeting 1 comma greeting 2 comma greeting 3 equals now 3 individual variable names. I want to say hello, I want to say how are you, I want to say how is it going. So here we have defined 3 individual variables with 3 individual values. One is hello separated by comma. Another one is how are you separated by comma, and the third one that goes to this one. It goes in the same sequence. However, the name of the variable is, it goes in the same sequence. So if you define that variable, now you have defined many variables. Then how would you even print, or how would you use those variables? So I will be showing you more variables. Let's first get those variables printed as you define them. I'm going to print the variable. I want to get the value hello. Now, to get the value hello, what I would do is I would just call the variable greeting1. You need to make sure that this name matches here. If you do that, you have the value hello. And you can also get the multiple variables printed all together, greeting2 and greeting3, etc. And you can see all of those value printed as you have defined, but here they are printed as as if it was a single word or single statement. Now you can separate them with some sort of comma here, and you can do that way. You can add comma here as well, and then you can then separate those values. And if you see here, now they are separated with the comma and the space as well. You can define the separator here as well, separator here to be non-space, and you can get those all joined together. You can add space over here so that it will be designed in much acceptable or much understandable way. Earlier, we defined some variables with two values within one single variable. Here, we have defined three individual values with three individual variables with three individual values. But how these are different and how this is different comparing to these variable assignment, so we need to understand a few of those. Let's print this value greeting 2. So you need to match greeting to here, the same variable name, and you are getting these both of these values assigned in the same variable. But here this is open and close parentheses here, and two statements are combined together. From this, what we can understand is you can assign one single value to each variable, or you can assign multiple values in each variable. So it is just a difference is when you get the output from variable, what you're getting is here one variable is giving one output, then you have a separator here, comma, then result of the second variable, and so on. But when you have assigned a multiple values into a single variable here, single variable, you're getting still getting the values. Maybe interpretation is, or the data formatting might be slightly different. Here you have open and close parentheses, and the data type here becomes a tuple instead of here each individual variable's data type or the text or string data type. Now we can also call the variables within the print statement more dynamically. I want to show you that right here. Here, when you have defined multiple greetings, these can be used into a print statement very dynamically. What I want to say here is print. I want to use someone's name here. To do that, I would introduce a new concept in this video, is something called f string or formatted string. What that formatted string means here, I will show you that in a second. I want to say I want to use multiple greetings into the same printing statement while making this more dynamic or more personal. I want to also define a variable called someone's name. I want to say name equals Ishwar, right? This is the name variable that I have assigned the value to be Ishwar. Let's call the name here. So I would add a open and close parentheses here, and I will say name inside that, and I would also add greeting 1, and I would also add greeting 2. I will also add greeting 3. Now these are multiple variables within a single print statement with open and close curly braces for each individual variables. Only the difference here in this print statement is f is added in the beginning, and each variables have opening and closing curly braces. Okay, and then I would say hello, and then name, and there is another hello. So hello name, Mr. I will say Mr. this name, and then I will say second portion of the print statement, that is greeting one, that is hello, and then I will add a exclamation mark, and I will say just as it is, and I will say here today, and I will add a question mark here, and how is it going? So I will say how is it going with you, and full stop. Right, there is a already question mark here in this greeting. I will update this variable with while removing the question mark. I will rerun that, and it will be now assigned as without the question mark, so with you and question mark here. And I will just run this line of code. Look at this here, how beautifully we have got the result. By now, you might have already understood that assigning variables with values, or having variables with different values, can be used dynamically within the print statement. Now, in the next run, what I want to do is I want to greet somebody else. Now, what do I do with this one? The variable name is Ishwar here. So what I will do here is I will change the person's name to be Zach. I will run that, and I will run this one here without making any change in this print statement. All I have done here is I have updated name to be Jack, and I just ran this line of code just as it is, and you can see that result has already changed. That being said, we have already automated greeting process by just updating the name. Let's say this is Peter. Run this line of code and run the same line of code again. It has changed to be Peter. And that is the power of using greeting statements, and specifically the print statement using variables. You want to change the greetings as well. So greeting 1, greeting 2, greeting 3, instead of how is it going, what you want to say is how is everything going there with you. So what you need to update here, all you need to do is update the greeting 3 and rerun the line of code, and that updated string is right here. You did not make any change on these two statements, and you have got dynamically designed the print statement with the updated greetings that you have just updated over here. And this print statement has been so dynamically designed and so powerful, with the print statement and then formatted string and having variables inserted with that. So that is why assigning variables or creating variables is one of the dynamic way of programming in Python. Let's take one more step ahead on variables and power of variables. You want to do a mathematical computation between two numbers or more than two numbers. Let's begin with the two numbers example. I want to say number A to be 10 and number B to be 15. So what you want to do is you want to create a calculator summation equals, so you want to do A plus B. So disregarding, and now you have defined a variable called calculated sum with the summation of A and B. And if you print now calculated sum is, you got 25 here. That being said, you defined A to be 10, B to be 15, and you have said A plus B to be the calculated sum, and you have printed the calculated sum, and you have got the summation of both the numbers. Now, let's say numbers change. Later on, we have seen that numbers change to be 12. All you gotta do is just run that, and number has already changed. How even you can make this calculator more dynamic? I will introduce something here called input. Input is a function that takes users input. So what that means here, I will say input, please enter the value, enter the first value that you want to add, and I would give that, and I will leave that as it is, and I would maybe probably I will add a backslash n for the new number. Here as well, I would say input, and I will give, say, please enter the second value that you want to add, and it will say a new line as well. Then what will happen is whatever the user inputs there, these two numbers will be added. But well, there is a small problem here. Let's run this and see what exactly problem we are encountering here. And here on the top of VS Code, you get the enter the first value. Let's say I'm entering 10 for now. Enter the second value here. Now second value, I'm entering 25 here. I would hit run, and I will print that to be 1025. Well, is that even correct? So I have a 10, I have a 25, and those 10 and 25 got added. I can also print the values, print, say, A, print B, and we have those 10 and 25, but we have here A plus B here, and those should have been 35. What's wrong about these? Remember, whenever you are assigning a value to the input parameter, it by default takes the value as a text string. If you say type, enter a type is a function that provides you the data type. Look at this here, str. Str stands for string, or that means a text type of data. And if you see type B as well, I would say print here, otherwise it will not print the values. Print type of A, and I'm saying print type of B, both, and see what it is giving, string and string. That being said, if you join two strings or two text, it will be joined in such a way, it will not be added as a number. To solve that problem, what you have to do is you have to convert these two text into int type, integer. Integer means the full number. Integer, int stands for integer, which is a whole number without decimal. Okay, without decimal. So if you do that, now this is going to be correctly added here. Let's enter the first value. I want to add 50, and the second value here is going to be 25, and let's see what happens with the result. So now the data type of the input values is int, or integer. Now, if you print those values, it will show you what you have entered, 50 and 25, and the summation of these two numbers is going to be the 75. So 50 plus 25 is 75. Now you have correctly got your dynamic calculator already created. So all you have to do, and this is dynamic enough because users can input any number, and those numbers would be added together. So you have programmatically, you have created a summation calculator for two numbers. Those two numbers can be any number. If you rerun the line of code, this will again ask you to enter the first value, which is going to be 1034, let's say. The second value, it will ask to enter 4053, some whatever that number you want to enter. enter it, and that calculator has been already executed to add those values. If you add those values, you have got those numbers. So first value was 1034, second value was 45345, and the summation of these two numbers is 46379. Very dynamic way of defining variable A, variable B, and defining another variable called calculator sum, that is the summation of A plus B, and then taking this, then printing the value. So you can make it more robust, more understandable. How you can do that? Let's see here. F string here, or formatted string, and then open close parentheses. After F you can add a open quote, and here closing quote before the closing parentheses, and you can say the first value entered by the user was, and then you can say that. And then another same way of creating another formatted string for variable B, the second value entered by the user was this, and then you can say formatted string, open curly braces, closing curly braces, closing quote, and you can add the summation of A, and can say B is, then you can say calculated sum. And if you see that result, how beautifully designed it is. Now doesn't matter what the user will insert value here. Let's try this again. So I would run this line of code again. I will provide my first value, pretty complex value, right? All of these large numbers. Second one, more complex values, and then enter that. Now you have already defined A and B, and also you have added the A plus B, A and B, and you have assigned that to calculator sum. If I print that, those are still the integer type. And now here, if I would run that, surprisingly these values are already added, and here you can see those both the values are printed here, as you have included over here, and then also you have included into your formatted string. Now, as we had mentioned earlier, printing statement has become now super dynamic. You can make it one additional line gap here. You can say print, and then you can add bunch of stars here. So let's say this one, and bunch of stars here. So I would keep adding here, not that, but shift, and then here bunch of stars to separate the values plus the summation result. Look at this here, how dynamically we have designed printing statement to create a calculator. So if you want to make it in one single place, printing, well, it may not be super important. Let's drop the type of data, and let's combine these two data into the single cell so that you don't have to run two different cells to create a summation of two numbers. I will add a comment here. This line of code adds the first and second numbers provided by the user. Okay, and we can see here, and then if I would run the line of code, as soon as user provides the first number, provides the second number, you will immediately get those numbers printed plus the summation, while very well explaining what is the first number, what is the second number, and what is the summation of this number. How dynamic! Assigning variables plus using those variables for many different purposes. Like in the same way, you can use the variables and the print statement to dynamically design any calculator or anything that might be very helpful for your personal use or for your organization's use. If you're using Python in your company that you work for, this is a fantastic way of using variables. In variables, case matter. When you assign a variable, let's say person name, equals Ishwar, right? I'm assigning this variable name called person name and the value called Ishwar. I assign the value here. I'm assigning a value again, person name equals Jack. Although name of the variable is different, name of the variable is the same, but here you can see that P is capital or uppercase, here P is the lowercase, N here is the uppercase, N here is the lowercase. That being said, this variable is completely different than this variable because of case doesn't matter. If I would print this person name, so here print person name, that will be Ishwar. If I would print this variable, so I would say print person name, and that's going to be Zach. Although the names are the same, the case doesn't match. That's made these two variables to be different. So in variable assignment, case matters, so you need to be careful on that. So another thing that I want to update here is I have assigned person name to be Ishwar here, but here below that I want to assign the person name to be Peter. If I would read run, then now I have no more Ishwar value assigned because it has been overwritten by the variable assignment over here. So every time you try to get the person name, it will always print Peter, no more Ishwar. In the same way, if you say person name, now new name to be Rose, and then if you run that line of code, that person name is no more. If you print the person name, it is now no more to be Jack. So it's no more Jack here. We have the Rose assigned, so it has overwritten Jack to be Rose. So that's how you can reassign the variable with to be different value. So if you didn't want to assign, you may want to be careful on these variable reassignment, which will change the value, which will overwrite the previous value if the case and everything, name and lowercase, uppercase, everything exactly matches, then it will override the value. That's something you may want to be careful while assigning the variable values to the specific variable, and you may want to be careful on overriding the values of variable. Print statements and variable assignments are inseparable part of your Python programming. Doesn't matter if you are developing a Python application or you're working on a data science project. You will be using both variable assignment and print statements at all the time. Now next one, we have introduced the next topic, which is data type. Let's jump into the next video, how data types, variable assignment and print statement can be all combined together, and we can get the best dynamic Python code design. Let's straight jump into that video and let's learn about this.